What's going on, everybody? I know it's been a while. I've been kind of busy. Not really, but a little busy. Messing around at the house, getting through these weeks of isolation, if you will, with the family. It's getting better around here, but that's not why I'm here today. I'm here to talk about a book of all things. Um, so, on this journey of self development, if you will, coaching and honing my skills and my craft, I've picked up quite a few books over the last couple years. And one of them that I probably noticed I had sitting behind me, for a little bit, is this one right here. It's called The One Thing, and it's by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. I've talked about it before. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in one or two of my other live productions, if you will. And today, I figured I'd talk about it a little bit more in depth. For those of you who haven't read the book, this should be, you know, a prompt. It's going to let you know whether or not you want to read it or not. For those of you who have read it, maybe you can stick around, figure we can collaborate a little bit, exchange ideas or opinions on the book. Overall, I thought it was a good book, and it was very enlightening and to the point. I liked it. It wasn't a very long read, but it wasn't a very short read either. I think it had just the right amount of information to where I wasn't getting like, oh, it's like a textbook. And it didn't read like a textbook. It was actually very good. Kept me going the whole time. So the one thing I'm going to talk about is the premise of the book, right? It's the one thing. It has to do with goals and reaching your goals. And it's not goals plural. It's actually a goal. What is the one thing you're trying to get to? What is the one thing you have to do to get to the next thing? And that's the important thing. And a lot of us, I think, lose track of that when we start setting these goals and when we have something to look forward to in the future or we want to look forward to in the future, we get sidetracked. And that's what it talks about. It talks about the 6 lies between you and success. And it specifically lists, 6 things that get in your way that you really didn't think that were getting in your way. The first one is that everything matters equally. And what does that mean? It means exactly what it says. It's nothing is equal when it comes to prioritization. You can't prioritize everything. And I had a buddy of mine who said he had an issue with that. Everything became a priority. Well, you can't because you have to focus. Go small is one of the points it makes. Each chapter has all the goods, the goodies it tells you. And then at the end, it says the key things to remember. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. So everything matters equally is the first one. So go small, focus on what's important. That's what that means. If it's not important, don't worry about it. And I know some of you may have a hard time figuring out what's important, but with a little bit of practice, you'll get there. And this says go extreme when it comes to that. And what does that mean? Well, the way they speak about it in the book is when you break it down to the one thing, once you get to the one thing, you have to break it down even further because everything can be broken down into, infinite little things. And once you get down to the bare bones of the task, that's where you start. And that's what I mean by go extreme. Next, they say no. And it doesn't have to necessarily be no. You can actually say not now or, later. But the fact of the matter is, if it's not the one thing you're supposed to be focused on at that point, your goal, your thing for that moment or day or week or month, say no. Put it off. All right. Because if you start focusing on other people's priorities, your priorities get put to the back burner. And it says don't get trapped in the check off game. What that means is people like to stay busy to stay busy. I have all these things I got to do, so I'm just going to check them off. So they start concentrating on the next task instead of focusing on the first task. All right. And that brings me to the next point, the next chapter, which is multitasking. That's the next lie. So multitasking is not a thing. It's not something that you should be doing, and it does nothing for you but cause distraction. And the fact is, distraction is normal. Everybody's going to do it. But multitasking takes a toll. You only have so much energy, and believe it or not, your brain is going to shut down if you're trying to do too many things at once. And there's a quote in the book, and I have to look it up. I don't feel like doing it right now, but basically it says multitasking is the best way to mess multiple things up at once instead of just one thing, right? So don't do it. Don't multitask. Pick the one thing you need to do and deal with it. All right. And the next one, so this chapter got me a little, I was a little off because it's a disciplined life is a lie in this book. It basically says, don't be a disciplined person, be a person with good habits, which I get. But I'm a firm believer of discipline and motivation are two things that get you to the finish line. They work in tandem. They don't work at the same time. It's a daisy chain, right? But that is the thing. So it says it's natural for everybody to get distracted, and it's okay. Don't beat yourself up if you do get distracted. Just get back on task when you can. And then multitasking, discipline, habits. I got sidetracked. See, it happens. Habits are awesome. It says build one habit at a time. That goes back to the multitasking thing. So once you've built that one habit, then start on the next habit. And this is where the discipline comes in my opinion. It says give each habit enough time, use discipline long enough before the habit kicks in. So habit is habit. I get it, but after a while, depending on what it is, it could tend to be a chore. And although it's a habit, sometimes you're going to need discipline or motivation in order to go ahead and accomplish those. That's why I may not agree with everything that was in that chapter. The next one I thought was interesting. Willpower is always on will call. That's a huge lie, I guess. And once I read the chapter, it made sense. So as you read through, you'll see that they make some really good points about willpower. And it says, don't spread willpower too thin because you have a fuel gauge when it comes to willpower. And if you overuse it, and when you're on E, what is going to happen next, right? Are you going to revert back to old habits, like bad habits? For instance, they made a point that, food for thought is actually a thing, right? You have to stay fueled. You have to keep your energies up. So they say take a break when you need a break. And if you wait too long, that break is going to turn into drinking a soda or an energy drink. You're going to resort to unhealthy things to keep your energy levels up, and then you're going to crash, and it's just, a vicious circle. So keep that in mind. And it says time your task. So do what matters most up front. And that was actually a big one. So my buddy, Sanjay G, that's what I call him because I don't want to butcher his last name. He's another coach I work with on a regular basis. And he actually puts that in his training. He's like, in the morning, you should do the most important thing first. That way, by the end of the day, when your willpower is just shot, you can move on to the next thing. I'm getting a call from Illinois. I bet they want to know about my warranty. So that was actually, I thought it was a very good point. Do the first thing that is most important first. Do it up front and do it early. Because when you're in the morning, and my buddy Sanjay, it was perfect the way he said it. He's like, when you wake up in the morning, you're already riding on some energy, which you don't realize you have. Your body's full of these chemicals that are getting you awake and focused for the start of the day. So get going on that first task. And I actually like that. And then it says, mind your motivation. And this one I thought was interesting as well. There's a lot of interesting things. I'm going to say this repeatedly. Just be forewarned. It says motivation, attention, and beliefs about your willpower impact your self-control. And it's pretty deep. You'd have to go in there and figure out what you think about that particular statement. To me, it says, if you think you have the willpower, if you don't have the willpower, then you're not going to. You have to be pretty self-disciplined in that aspect. Which one is next? No. So this chapter I thought was kind of weird as well, but it's called A Balanced Life. So for my military friends, work-life balance is something that is thrown around on a regular basis. I'm pretty sure it's pretty big in the civilian sector too. But the point of this chapter is you really can't balance. In order to be successful in one area, you're going to neglect another area. Now, the way they put it makes a lot of sense. It's not what am I going to neglect? It's for how long am I going to neglect it? And that's when things tend to come way out of balance. So they call it counterbalancing. So what they say is you can work hard all day at work and maybe take a little bit of work home for, let's say, 2 weeks. However, after that 2 weeks, it's time to pay a little bit more attention to your personal life. So they split it up to personal and professional buckets. They use, buckets full of water as their analogy. So that makes sense. You can't neglect one for too long, otherwise it will no longer exist, or it will suffer greatly more than any other. So I thought that was interesting. You have to counterbalance your life, not balance it. Every now and then something will get neglected, and it's okay. It's a matter of what can go longer and still survive. Something tells me your professional life can go a little bit longer, not your personal life, depending on your situation. It says the next big lie is big is bad. They say think big. It says double everything. The premise is, let's say you're going for 10 times, something, whatever it is, money, um, connections, growing your email list, whatever it is. You're trying to, go 10 times more. Well, they say go 20. And the plan that you create, you sit down and you build, will ultimately get you to your initial goal. And it makes sense. And some of you, just like me, would say, well, if that's the case, if I already know I'm going for that, why wouldn't I just plan for 10 to begin with, right? The point is, the smaller you think, the smaller you will create. It says create big. If you don't create big, you're going to create small. How big do you want to go? If you're trying to be a small company, fine, do whatever you feel comfortable with. But the point is, the bigger you go, the more success you'll have. I'm not saying you're going to get it always, but you'll get more than you initially thought you could. And it says, think different, create your own creation. Now, if you're like me, creativity is not like your strong suit. Coming up with stuff off the top of my head, during the day is not something I do on a regular basis. I have to sit back and I have to read. I have to collaborate, ask a lot of questions, network. But it doesn't mean I can't. Exactly, go big or go home. I got a couple comments. So I agree with that, big time. Just be different. And it says act bold. And I like this. Big ideas must be followed by big actions. And that is huge. You ever get your analysis paralysis, right? Individual that gets stuck in learning mode and doesn't move forward. Smartest person in the world, but they're not applying it. That is a big thing, especially when it comes to getting your goals. And last is don't fear failure. This is one of my favorites, because people get scared, when they start moving towards their goals. And I've mentioned it before. They get to that one point and they get scared. It's either sink or swim. And they're like, all right, well, I'm just going to prolong this as long as I can. Why? Because they're scared of failing. And failure is not necessarily a bad thing at all. You learn. If you can't learn from your past mistakes, you're never going to get above it or past it. And if you can admit that you were wrong and messed up, and all right, what did I did wrong? How can I improve upon that? You're going to go far. So that's the last one in the book. So I highly recommend reading it. I enjoyed it. I mean, I really couldn't put it down. Even if you don't have a lot of time, one chapter a night. They're not long chapters, and you can get this bad boy done in a week or so. So that's my overall take on the book. I thought it was really good and it's very helpful. It's got a lot of good points and it's full of awesome quotes, which I have written down somewhere and I can review on a regular basis to keep me going on my goals. Which I have to say, because of the book and because of working with a couple of coaches that I'm really close with, I'm actually seeing things start to unfold and things are, growing for me, and I'm pretty happy about it. Hope everybody's having the same luck that I'm having with this lockdown, if you will, this COVID-19 pandemic. I know there are a lot of folks out there that may be in a spot that is not necessarily conducive to creativity. But I would hope that maybe you pick up something like this and it gets the creative juices flowing. It gets that motivation, that fire lit inside that says, you know what? I think I can create something for myself. I think I can get out of this and never have to worry about this again because I'm going to build something for me and my family. And this is a good start on getting going. And of course, if you need any help or got any questions, hit me up in Facebook Messenger, leave a comment. Yeah, and let me know how things are going. So I really appreciate y'all tuning in. I'm going to try to do these at least 3 times a week. I've been kind of behind. Things are getting, the schedule's all weird here at the house. And, Monday, Wednesday, Friday is my goal from now on. So until then, y'all take it easy.